1-minute warning. Can you hear me, Marcy? It sounds low. Is it okay? Is it you can hear me okay? Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for September 25 regular council meeting. I call the meeting to order at 1 p.m. I ask council members if you have any added items. Seeing none, we will move down to adoption of the agenda. Please, a motion. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I make the motion that council adopt the regular council meeting agenda for Monday, September 25th, 2023 at 1 p.m.
Thank you. I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And I'm looking for consent or questions from council with regards to the previous council meeting minutes, please, of September 11th. We're good. So consent for the adoption of the September 11th meeting minutes. No delegations or presentations today. Page 8, please, of your agenda. We'll move right into Mountain View Power Committee bylaw. When we had our CAO bring this back to his administration, would you like to speak to it at all? Mr. Williams, CO Williams?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Yes, this was introduced at the first meeting of the month, and the request was to bring it back with a bit more information on composition, term limits, and other such mechanics. So it exists in front of you as amended, where we are asking for 3 readings today, unless someone sees reason to bring it back further.
Thank you, C.O. Williams. Very good. I will start with first reading. I'll ask for first reading, and we can go from there. Yes, Councillor Blatz, please.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that the Mountain View Power Committee bylaw 2023-33 be given first reading.
Thank you, Councillor Blatz. I'll open the floor now to any questions, and we'll go to Deputy Mayor Ryan.
Thank you very much, Mayor Dahl. I just have a quick question with regards to page 10 of the agenda, item 3.6 and item 5.3. They seem to contradict each other. Because item 3.6 says the committee will appoint, and then it says in item 5.3, it says the town administration shall chair the meeting. So that's contradicting each other. So I might say one, just take it from shall to may, just in case, at some point there might be no chair available or whatever. So, do you see what I'm saying?
My question would be, is there a clear difference between the one is a vice chairperson and one is a chairperson? Just a chair?
3.6 says appoint a chairperson and a vice chairperson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl and Councillor Ryan. Correct, that is an error. The original intention, 5.3 was added after, 3.6 was supposed to be removed, was the original thought, but the correction you made was also in line, depending on council's preference. The logic behind letting the town administration chair the committee meetings but not be able to vote was just more to make the process more efficient, as this committee will only meet twice per year for a very transactional purpose. So it was 3.6 was supposed to be deleted. My apologies.
Thank you, yeah, thank you very much. That makes it very clear, and I understand the reasoning behind having administration chair the meeting in that case. So if we just remove 3.6, we're good.
Thank you. So we will be, should we do that now? I'd like ask for a motion then to have that deleted. Would you like to move forward with that?
I don't think we need to have a separate motion. I think we could just go as amended when we go to the next, when we go and vote on the first reading.
Okay, we are going to be voting on this now. We're just discussing it, so as amended, and we have Councillor Blatz that did the first reading as amended. Thank you, Councillor Blatz. I will then call, do you have further question?
I do, actually.
Okay, Mayor, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, just to CAO Williams, at any point here, maybe I'm missing it and I didn't read correctly, but I just want to make sure that it's clear. Maybe we need a 6.3 under the rules of the committee, saying something about this being this committee advises council to, or makes recommendations to council. Council actually has the final authority on the grants, and I'm not sure if it's clear within the rules or within the information set out. So, but I again, I could be wrong and misread. So please clarify that for me.
Thank you. We'll go to Councillor Cummings and then CO Williams.
Sorry, Mayor, I kind of need administration's answer to the deputy mayor's answer before I can correctly articulate my question.
So you're asking me to hold your thought, and we'll go to CAO Williams.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. And it is a fair point from Councillor Ryan. The intention was that since Section 6 states Council Policy 804C governs the committee, that policy then speaks to what the committee's capacity is, that it does recommend for council's approval, as council has the spending authority on that. But yeah, it's open to that amendment too, if you think it's necessary.
Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I don't know if the rest of council would be amicable to this, but can we not empower this committee to make that decision? Does it need to come back to council? We've already assigned a policy on how much dollar amounts are going. Does council need to approve these grants, or can we not empower this committee to make those decisions on their own? That is the direction that's been given to all municipalities by our governing body, the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, is to start empowering more of our committees to actually make decisions on their own. We have the ability here to pass a bylaw empowering this committee to choose who receives the grants based on the applications received and approved by administration. So administration, by taking the lead here and having their policy in place to determine the eligibility of the committees or the dollar amounts plus the dollar amount that's actually being attributed, all council will do is rubber stamp the decisions made by the committee. I'd rather just give these folks the power they need to make that decision themselves than rely on council doing it itself. It seems to be the more progressive way councils around the province are working.
Thank you, Councillor Cummings. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Although I appreciate Councillor Cummings' comments, I do believe, though, that through this process, they may get more people applying for this grant than what they will feel comfortable to approve. Therefore, if it does come back to council, then we would make that final decision for them, and they're not going to be the ones who would have to, because I would suspect that we're going to get an awful lot of groups and committees applying for this grant. So that would be something to bear in mind. that, and plus the fact that if it comes back to council, it will be, the vote would be held, or the accepting the recommendations for information would be held in a public meeting, and therefore all of the citizens of or all the residents of the town of Olds would realize what we're doing and where the money is going to be allocated. And I think that would be, for transparency's sake, a better process.
Very much. We'll move over to back to Deputy Mayor Ryan and then to Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I do appreciate the comment from Councillor Cummings as well, but I agree with Councillor Blatz here. I mean, we are the elected officials who have been put in charge of the public purse, so to speak, and therefore I think it is our duty to take the responsibility. If somebody has a complaint, then we're the ones who they're going to complain to, as opposed to a committee. So I do believe that it should be the ultimate decision of the town council to make that I guess decision in the end of the day, and that's, I guess that's the way most of the committees that I've ever worked on has gone, so as well. So thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Just briefly, I would prefer to have the final say continue to reside with council. We've acknowledged there's probably going to be 2 intakes through the year. Not sure at this point what the volume is going to be for those requests, but I certainly look for this committee to filter those, cull out the applicants, and then come to council and have council have that final say. I certainly support that, staying with council. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. And I would concur with Councillor Blatz, Ryan, and Wilson's statements in that this being an MCC as well, it's the town's obligation to manage this operation. So I would also agree with the comments that have been made. So thank you.
A comment, Councillor Walsh? I see you're busy.
No, I don't believe Mountain View Power is an MCC. I'm nodding.
Thank you very much. We've had quite a good round of discussion, and we have a motion on the floor right now from first reading from Councillor Blatz as amended for 3.6 deletion. Is that correct? I will then call for the vote. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. And a motion for second reading, please. Okay, Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I make the motion that the Mountain View Power Committee Bylaw 2023-33 be given second reading as amended.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I'll open the floor. No, we've had it amended once. I will then call for the vote. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. I'm looking for consent, please, for third reading. Councillor Deputy Mayor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that Mountain View Power Committee Bylaw 2023-33 be given unanimous consent for presentation of third reading.
Thank you. I'm now asking for the vote for unanimous consent. Those in favor? I believe that's consent. That's carried. Thank you. And third and final reading, please. Councillor Daly.
I move that Mount View Power Committee Bylaw 2023-33 be given third reading.
Thank you. I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Cumming. Okay, thank you. That's carried. Thank you very much. We will now move down to new business, page 12 of your agenda. And this is Coffee with Council update that was prepared by our CEO Williams. And would you like to speak to this? Thank you.
Thank you again, Mayor Dahl. So the Coffee with Council sessions are now ended, as you know, and although not as much public attendance as we hoped for, I think, in my opinion, and I think you might share it as well, that it was successful nonetheless. So what this paper just seeks to do is ask Council a couple questions, mainly the key messages that I heard from attendees at those sessions, and if you're open to this format proceeding, and then obviously whatever other thoughts and opinions you had about its format. assuming the council likes some version of this engagement, the third paragraph in background of the future sessions are just some ideas that administration thought could be incorporated to make it a more recurring, perhaps more condensed, and into 1 or 2 sessions, maybe once or twice per year. But just for open discussion right now, and happy to hear thoughts and feedback.
Thank you, RCA Williams. I understand that council did provide you with feedback of our particular sessions. Personally, I agree that we should condense it. It was busy in some areas and less busy in others. And when I say condense, I think we can condense it into twice a year, maybe 3 groups instead of 6. But I'm open to hear what other councillors have to say. Councillor Cummings and then Deputy Mayor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. So I thought they were pretty useful in a lot of different ways. I agree that some of the locations that we were at weren't conducive to having the right people. That's a learning experience. And administration can certainly identify that with the attendance rates and whatnot. All of the future session recommendations I agree with. So to answer question 2 is pretty easy. Yes, I'd rather do this again. Question 1, I'm going to break it down into two groups for the messages that I heard. One were the personal problem groups that I'll call, where people are coming very specific problems that aren't really town issues. They're more neighborly issues or issues of that nature. They're a little harder to deal with in this type of setting. Not to distract from the passion that the citizens brought about those sessions. But I did hear quite a lot of larger, broader issues that were helpful in determining where the citizenry, at least some of the citizens, are driving their attentions to, and garbage and snow clearing. I'm pretty sure that they were brought up at most of the sessions. All of the sessions that I went to, those 2 topics were brought up quite a lot. So I'm very happy with the sessions, and I'd like to continue doing it in whatever format works logistically the best moving forward.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan.
Thank you very much, Mayor Dahl. And as you well know, you and I attended that elected officials women's networking session last week. And there was quite a bit of discussion with regards to these coffee with council, and some different opinions that came out from different communities, which some of them have them once a month and some of them have them once a year. And so I do agree that there is tremendous merit in having these at least twice a year, not necessarily splitting up of council to go to them. I think we could have one during the day, one at night. And that way it gets a broader range of people attending, and having all of council there it would be a good way of handling it. However, in saying that, we are going to Alberta Muni's conference this week, and so perhaps we can have conversations with elected officials from other municipalities and see what they're doing in other municipalities as well, and get a good idea of bringing something here that would be workable for our council and for our community. So at the end of the day, I do think that we got a lot of information from the small amount of people that attended, and I do think it was valuable, and I'd like to see it continue.
Yes, that's true. We will be at our convention this upcoming week, and it would be good for us to get a wee bit of a survey for our administration to see different venues that are used in different municipalities. I believe we identified several areas for budget from everything that I heard at each session I was at that was valuable to administration. So at this point, could I get a motion on the floor? Councillor Ryan? Or Deputy Mayor Ryan?
Thank you very much, Mayor Dahl. I move that council accept the coffee with council administrative update as presented.
Thank you very much. Those in favor? That's carried. Moving down to page, sorry?
I had indicated a preference to speak to that, so I didn't know if you were just asking for the motion, though, and then throw it back open to questions, or that's why I remained silent.
Okay, we have voted on that. However, go ahead and speak your point.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Dahl. I'll be very brief. Yeah, I see value to having the sessions, given that we've just had 6 sessions here. I'm not sure about fall 2023 and what that exactly looks like. I do support the evening session to hopefully generate more attendance from individuals that are otherwise occupied during the day. And as Councillor Cummings said, yeah, there were a wide range of topics, some very individual in nature. And for the benefit of our vast viewing audience, I would say things like, why isn't there a sidewalk, ranging from why isn't there a sidewalk in front of my house to this very standard, typical things like waste removal, snow plowing, green space removal, acknowledgement from town administration around emails being sent in and how timely and what that acknowledgement should look like. So yeah, certainly covering a vast array of topics, but I certainly see the benefit and value in having these sessions, probably no more than 2 a year. So, thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. My apology for missing you in prior to our vote. And we're on page 13 at this time. Prior to getting started, for the first motion that we will be speaking to, we have one amendment, and that would be under the 5 of the ABCs. It's Intermunicipal Cooperation Committee. So we'll just do a housekeeping for that and delete coordination to cooperation. Other than that, I would like to discuss this prior to going to first reading as amended for council input. And I would open the floor. If anybody would like to speak to anything on the request for decision for, okay, thank you, CAO Williams.
Thank you again, Mayor Dahl. And just a quick introduction. So this paper is largely just a preface to the upcoming organizational committee meeting. And we have 2 outstanding items for that, outside of the appointments, of course. One is OPAC, the Old Policing Advisory Committee, which Council has discussed previously, and the recommendation from administration in consultation with the RCMP is that we discontinue this committee. The second is Citizens on Patrol. I did speak with Councillor Daly after this agenda package went out, and the recommendation is going to be kind of a status quo, I believe, until we hear from those volunteers that run the committee, if they're going to continue with it. Because even though it's a town legislative committee, it really is operated by the volunteers with very little input from the town outside of a councillor appointment. So I think it's more prudent if we wait for them to provide us with direction. So.
Thank you very much. So we have the 2 recommendations, and we will continue to leave Citizens on Patrol until otherwise recommended. Very good. I will move forward then and ask for a motion or to get on the floor for the first recommendation, or Deputy Mayor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that council accepts the information as presented on the council committees of the town of Olds. And I do have...
As amended?
As amended, and I do have a comment as well.
Yeah, I noticed Councillor Blatz put her hand up. Was that for a comment? Thank you very much, Councillor Blatz, and go ahead with your note, Deputy Mayor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and I just want to speak again to the Police Advisory Committee. I believe...
Of order, can you save that to the second?
You want me to say? Well,
Recommend-
if we vote on the first, then we're accepting that it's not on the list.
But the second motion will make that determination. Is that correct?
Yeah, they're not inclusive motions, so I believe the council votes on the first motion here. The second one is still up for debate, whether or not it proceeds.
Okay, well, that's fine.
Thank you.
I'll leave it.
Yes, it's a separate motion. So we do have a motion on the floor as amended. Is everyone clear what we're voting on? Okay, I'll call the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Now we're going to the second motion. If we can get it on the floor and then we can discuss it. Councillor Daly?
Thank you, Mayor. Move that council dissolves Olds Police Advisory Committee effective immediately.
Thank you, Councillor Daly. And now questions, if any. Councillor Deputy Mayor Ryan?
Thank you very much, Mayor Dahl. With regards to this, I think it's actually a little premature to dissolve this committee. There was a lot of work put into setting it all up, and then COVID hit, and then it went into hiatus. I do believe that there is a lot of work that this committee can do. In fact, when I was doing some research about it, I noticed Alberta Munis does have some information on their website, and I'm going to quote them in this particular comment that I'm making. The major objectives of police commissions or police committees, like this is, are arm's length oversight, localizing the complaint process, and increasing the accountability of police services to the public. Well, my question to council would be, why wouldn't we want that to continue? Why wouldn't we want to make sure that we have arm's length oversight, localizing complaint process, and increasing the accountability? After all, we are funding the police service in this community, and I do believe that we should continue to have that opportunity to have this committee in order to address all three of these things. I think dissolving this at this point is premature. I think we need to have a conversation with all the members who were on this committee before it was put into hiatus to see what their feelings are with regards to what they see as the committee going forward, or even if they want to participate. I do believe that there was a lot of work put into putting this together, and I really would hate to see this going off the books when other communities are trying to get police advisory committees and police commissions established. We seem to be taking a back step, and I think that that's not correct move to make at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Councillor Blatz, and then I have a comment, and Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. And coincidentally, I've done the same research that Councillor Ryan had done. And being part of the original council that developed this committee, I mean, I would be more apt to support it if we were to put it on a hiatus or a status quo until we have a little bit more background information, perhaps. And I understand that this is probably a capacity level for both our administration and for the RCMP. But, I mean, at this point in time, we've got our new community resource officer that's just getting really familiar with the community and starting to develop some of these. And perhaps maybe if we waited 6 months or a year until we get some information from that corporal, then we could go from there and maybe decide that at a point in time at a later date that we would dissolve this. So, thank you.
Thank you. I just need clarity on getting more information from that corporal, or getting more information. We have administration, we have the staff sergeant, and we have the director of protective services who've all provided all that information. But could you make that more clear for me, please?
Well, I wasn't part of the conversation that the council had, so that's why I make that comment.
Let's have their hand up. Council Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I was one of the original members of the Police Commission, the Olds Police Advisory Committee. And I'm torn between two different things here. So the Police Act has very specific rules on the three types of commissions or committees that can be set up. Unfortunately, the one that the town of Olds set up has no power, can't deal with complaints. It's not legally allowed to deal with complaints. There's a lot of things it can't do other than do one thing, according to the Police Act, and that's provide the three priorities to the local police department, which this council has taken upon itself to do and has not empowered this committee to do at all. So in a nutshell, according to the Police Act and the bylaw that we created to create this Police Advisory Committee, it has no power. It has no ability to do anything the way it's been set up because it's not legally allowed to deal with complaints. Can't do it. It's not legally allowed. The Police Act overrides everything that this does. I have the Police Act right in front of my face, and it clearly states, unless you're a commission, are the only ones that can deal with complaints of police officers, and a commission is only allowed if you are an independent police department, which we are not. We're a committee. Now, the other committee that's allowable is empowered for everything but complaints. Still can't deal with complaints. But it deals with contract negotiation, the hiring of the police chief. So I think, unfortunately, I'm going to support the dissolvement of the OPAC as it stands today, because it simply was the wrong way to go, in my opinion, and that we need to reinvestigate the Police Act and what the Police Act of Alberta allows us to do, and the 3 types of committees and commissions that are allowed, and choose one that has power. Simply having a committee that has no power to do anything and then assume it can do things which it can't do is kind of not very helpful. At the same point, if we're going to create a committee that has the legal authority to present those 3 priorities the community has, we have to let them do it. And previous council didn't allow them to do that, so they weren't allowed to put that into the bylaw, because the council wanted to have the power to make those 3 recommendations, and we've made those 3 recommendations each year we've been in power. So we really have to take a better look at the Police Act and determine what type of committee, if any, that we want. The one that we have, though, just doesn't have any power at all, so I'll support the dissolution of it.
Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Through you to the CAO Williams, if you could just comment a little bit on, what does the process look like? What are the mechanisms now? Because it seems to me a key part of this is feedback and input from our residents around policing. So I'm thinking in the area of town halls, whether it's with the RCMP or the COP, the Community Police and CPO. How does that work? What's the process to ensure that at least there's a vehicle and a mechanism there for residents to provide some feedback? And do we know how those town halls have operated in the past as far as attendance?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Wilson. Regarding working backwards, the town halls, I don't have a lot of information on them outside that. I know they operate about 5 per year, but council has to remember that Olds is only one community, our detachment services. So the fact that our police advisory committee for Olds is not the full scope of our detachment, you have to really determine its efficacy through that standpoint as well. The open houses, we have spoken with the RCMP about it. We do want to make them as accessible as possible. Like, for instance, having it after hours or span at least, a 4 to 7 kind of window at least. The second thing is the community resource officer who was hired this year for the first time. That is a fully municipal funded position, so that is citizen engagement and input in its own way. I believe there is certainly the need to get more information to council about the core activities and the mandate of the CRO position. Regarding what residents want to see, it obviously is very important to engage with them and to understand what their expectations are for the $2 million in tax dollars we're spending with the RCMP. But it's also important that we be pragmatic, that despite how much money, we could spend $5 million and still have no more control or right to control or to direct the RCMP unless we establish our own standalone police force. I mean, there's avenues for the committee. And Councillor Ryan's correct, the AUMA website does a great job in explaining it. And then to Councillor Cummings' point, what existed in practice here was not mimicking what was available. But if you look through the website, what police committees can do, it's substantial in terms of the work involved. And administration's opinion, that work involved doesn't get you very far because that oversight in Ottawa is what controls the RCMP. So it's great to do it in name only. Like, we're going to engage and give citizens a voice. But is it any better if they're not getting a true voice? That no matter what decisions we want to see, like hiring, it does say in there, we'll have input on hiring the staff sergeant position. Will we, though? No, we won't. So I believe engagement exists. It can be fine-tuned within the current mechanisms, but the recommendation to dissolve this committee was more based around the realistic situation on the ground, that resources will be devoted, time will be spent both from the town side, but both from the officer side, who are perpetually short-staffed. So it wouldn't serve its purpose, in our opinion.
For sharing that, Councillor Daly?
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Cummings and CAO Williams, I agree with what you're saying. I it is exactly the way I was thinking, is that really what authority do we have over the RCMP? And most of those decisions, as you mentioned, are made in Ottawa, out of our control. And so I agree 100% with what the two of you have said here today, and I agree with the motion going forward.
Thank you. Did you want to speak at all, Councillor Walsh?
I could, but my views have been expressed, and yeah, I support the motion here.
Thank you. I concur as well with CAO Williams and Councillor Cummings. I feel that we need to have a better and more proactive way of getting this through to not only council, to the citizens as well. And when it comes to complaints, it's quite open. So I will support this motion as well. Is there anything else further? Okay. We have motion on the floor from Councillor Daly that council dissolves the Olds Policing Advisory Committee effective immediately. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. We will move forward at this point then to item 5C, page 15. Parkland Regional Library budget. Okay. I'll get a motion on the floor, please. Probably the rep. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that Parkland Regional Library proposed budget for 2024 be approved.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. Does anyone have questions with regards to this proposed budget? Thank you, Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Dolan. Through you to CEO Williams. First of all, I really have to say I'm impressed with the presentation of this budget. Although it's long and seems somewhat convoluted, it's very descriptive, and I felt that it was very beneficial from an information standpoint. But my question is actually, which census are we using, the 2019 census or the 2021? The MG, or the municipal government website, is kind of wishy-washy as to what we're using, and I know that there was discussion in the past whether we were using the Alberta Treasury Board census numbers or whether we were using the 2021 census numbers, so I just want clarity on that, please.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Blatz. To my understanding, it is the Treasury Board's population numbers, which are a few hundred higher than Stats Canada, but Councillor Wilson is the appointed member and can probably speak more clearly to that.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Blatz. Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl and CAO. And I'll speak briefly because as CAO mentioned, I am council's representative on the Parkland Regional Library Services Board. We had the board meeting September 14th, which included the discussion of the budget. And just to rewind the clock a bit, as people will know or may remember, so back in late or in 2022 and early 2023, the discussion centered exactly on Councillor Blatz's question and the fact that there's a misalignment, a lack of consistency. The government releases funds to, in this case, Parkland Regional Board grants based on a certain set of population statistics. I believe they're using 2019 data. And Parkland Regional, in turn, is invoicing its 64 members based on what will probably be 2023 Treasury Board numbers. And in the case of the town of Olds, there's probably a 400 or 500 person gap, meaning the numbers are higher to that the Parkland Board uses to charge the town of Olds. There was a motion back a year ago to revisit those numbers and align them. That motion was defeated at the board member level by, I think, a vote of about 21 to 17. At the September 14th board meeting, another motion was put on the table directing the executive board of Parkland Regional to revisit and more specifically look at the implications of aligning the two databases. So whatever numbers, population numbers are being used by the provincial government to give monies to the board, we would use theoretically those same numbers then Parkland would to charge out to its members. So that motion passed in September last week. again, directing the executive board to look at the implications of aligning those numbers. I think what people need to understand is there are going to be gains and losses for the members around the table, depending on what those numbers are. When I do some back of the envelope math, and again, it's difficult because there are so many different numbers, 2021 census, 2019 numbers, 2023 Treasury Board projections. But if I look at some of the numbers, in theory, Town of Olds could end up paying slightly more than we're paying now, because it's an inverse relationship. And if your population numbers are going to go down, go down, your per capita requisition amount is going to go up. And the difference, as an example, between the 2019 population numbers and the 2021 population numbers is about 8,000 people in total for all 64 members of the board. So you can kind of manipulate and play it both ways. You're going to use lower population numbers that may not necessarily mean a lower requisition to the town. There are offsets there. But you're right. Right now, there is a gap. It was discussed at the board meeting, and it's been directed back to the executive committee to relook at that gap. Probably not with a change for 2024 budget, if anything happens.
Thank you, Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you to Councillor Wilson, just a question on your comments there. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this looks at an overall region, and so if the population numbers drop in the town of Olds, and let's say they go up in the town of Innisfail, does that not like cancel each other out for the per capita because we're all in this game together?
Yes, and through you, Councillor, through Mayor Dahl, through to you, Councillor, yeah, there are puts and takes, but unless you actually know those puts and takes, and again, I think I misspoke somewhat, but if you look at the 2019 Alberta Municipal Affairs numbers, they were 220,000 people. If you look at the 2023 Alberta Treasury Board numbers, they're 228,000, and that's what Parkland is using right now. So there's about an 8,600 gap between the muni numbers and the Treasury Board numbers. So depending on how those individual puts and takes occur, you're right, between Innisfail and Sylvan and Camrose and everything else, it's fine for Olds to say, yeah, you know, our population should be 9,100, our population numbers should be 9,100 rather than 9,600. So if we come down 500, you got to find 500 elsewhere. You may or may not. And right now, as I said, between 2019 pop numbers and Treasury Board 2023, there's an $8,600 person difference. So, and I apologize for all the numbers. So,
Questions? You answered them very well. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Deputy Mayor Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Yes, I was on PLR when we first started having the conversation with regards to using numbers. This council, in fact, last year voted against having against the budget being approved because they were using Alberta Treasury Board and finance numbers and not the same numbers that the government of Alberta uses to give grant money. My point is that while there's 8,600 numbers difference, my point is, for the town of Olds, that's the only ones we have to be worried about. That's what we need to be concerned about. They're looking at a population for the town of Olds with the Treasury Board numbers as 9,753. Our census numbers in 2021 were around 9,233, something like that. So a good 500 difference in the number. That means we're paying for 500 people that we don't have that they're charging us for. So why would we continue to allow that to occur? Why would we approve this budget when we are paying for people that we don't even have? So it doesn't make any sense to me. The board, and the same whole question was brought up with regards to all of the communities in Mountain View County, all of the communities in Mountain View County. agreed that the Alberta Treasury Board numbers were skewed because all of us were up. And so why should other people get, or other communities get undercharged and we get overcharged? It's unfair. We should all be using the same numbers that the government of Alberta uses. It's pretty straight, cut and dry to me. So I will vote against approving this budget for the same reasons I voted against approving the budget last year when I was on the board and the year before. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and thank you, Councillor Ryan. You're right, you did provide some additional background. And for me, I still struggle with this. Certainly from a principal perspective, it makes all the sense in the world to me, and I can't understand why we wouldn't align the numbers being used for dollars coming into the Parkland Board and for those dollars going out. And again, there are going to be, for lack of a better word, what I'll say, winners and losers. As Councillor Daly alluded to, if Old's population is down, it's possible that Innisfail and or any of the other member municipalities, their populations are going to go up, and hence more of an allocation. So in principle, I do struggle with this and why we can't and others can't see the alignment and the consistency of the numbers. But my caution is we may not like the result because, again, it's a simple math formula. The Parkland budget is $3.3 million. You're going to divide that by population count to get your per capita number. If you take your population count from 220,000 or 228,000 down to 220, you're going to drive your per capita allocation up. So yes, Olds will see lower population, but offsetting that will be a higher, potentially, per capita allocation. So.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Walsh and then back to Deputy Mayor Ryan.
Yeah, I really appreciate Councillor Wilson's analysis of the situation. I've served 9 years on the Parkland Regional Library Board, and this discussion has gone around forever. And he's right. They need a budget, they know what they need, and it's divided amongst the people in the whole region. And we could win or we could lose through just going back to 2019 stats. It's not as simple as being that principle that we're looking at, I forget what it was, 44, 55 cents per capita, but no, I support this. It's just, and I'm glad to hear that the executive committee will be looking at the consequences of changing this.
Thank you for that comment. Councillor Cummings, Deputy Mayor Ryan and then Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. And I just want to get back to Councillor Wilson's comment with regards to, obviously the requisition would increase if your numbers dropped. My only comment to that would be, then it would be transparent. My comment all along has been that Parkland Regional Library was building budgets on numbers, using per capita numbers that benefited them by keeping the requisition low. And I said at the time, even I was on the executive for a couple of years there, and I said, that's not transparent. We should actually be using the same numbers, and this has only really become when they decided to use Treasury Board numbers. They had been using the same numbers. They only changed to Treasury Board numbers when I was on the board a couple of years ago, because the Municipal Affairs decided not to update and not to allow census to happen, or not to accept municipal census that were going around the province, and they didn't update the numbers. So this is actually a relatively new a problem that has only been occurring within the last 4 or 5 years. But I'm just saying that if the requisition has to rise from 43 cents to 50 cents, then that's fine. But that's transparent. That's showing that you actually need this money, not basing a budget on false numbers. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you. Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple of quick points here, and we've had a similar discussion with Mountain View Senior Housing, and to me, they're very similar processes here, right? We are required by legislation, by act, by agreement, by whatever, to participate in the Parkland Regional Library. They give us a budget, they say, here. They have, what, 26 members, you said there, Councillor Wilson? 64 members.
Municipalities, 48 libraries.
So there's 64 municipalities got together with a representative from every municipality, and I believe you did tell us what the vote was, overwhelmingly in favor of this numbering system. And then 17 opposed this numbering system. What practicality is there in us saying no to this budget? I don't think we're legally allowed to say no to the budget, because we're by law required to pay the requisition, are we not? And that maybe that's the question I'm asking. Is this much like the Mountain View Senior Housing in that we are required by law or agreement or contract to pay this amount regardless of whether or not we agree with what numbering system they used to come up with the number? I could be sitting here and saying, well, their staff to operation budget ratio of 3 to 1 is ridiculously high and I don't agree with it. But I didn't create the budget. I don't know what it's all about. So where's the practicality in saying, well, we've got all these members, we sent Councillor Wilson there to express administration's view, this council's view at their 64-member committee, which is just dramatically large, and it was shut down, and this is the numbering system they choose. So where's the practicality in that? But I would like to know, is this a similar contract or legislated piece of works that we simply cannot not be part of without a huge process to pull ourselves out of Parkland Regional Library and to assume control of our own library?
I see we have two people that would like to speak. Would you prefer, okay, we'll go to actually our representative, Councillor Wilson, first.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and through you and to Councillor Cummings and the rest of the council. And thank you, Councillor Cummings, for your comments and question. I'll try and address them, and if I have gaps or misunderstanding, I'm sure CEO and/or Councillor Ryan can step in and correct me. But so I referenced one vote, and that was about a year ago. A motion came to the overall board to amend the agreement in terms of the population numbers that are used. And that was voted down, I believe, by a vote of 21 to 17 in terms of the request to align the numbers based on incoming funds and outgoing funds. The budget itself, I believe, Councillor Ryan or Councillor Cummings, you're correct to a certain extent. We are obligated to pay. We're a part of the committee and the agreement and the membership. However, the budget requires 2/3 approval by 2/3 of the municipality, 2/3 approval of the municipalities, so the 64 members representing 2/3 of the population. I think the previous year budget, or the current year budget, 2023, was passed with an approval rating of 71%. Again, what's required is 2/3 approval by municipalities representing 2/3 of the population. So it passed for 2023 with a 71% approval rating. The motion to amend the agreement to change the population numbers earlier in the year was voted down by a vote of 21 to 17. At the end of the day, we're talking about, well, and I think everybody knows my view on dollars. I certainly count the pennies, track the pennies. And again, this is partially where I'm torn. This is a $87,000 requisition, which I'm not saying is not an insignificant amount, particularly for ourselves here in the town. It's an increase of a couple of $1,000s year over year. But I am fussed, and certainly I look at those dollars, the 2,000, 3,000, or 4,000 that's going up. And so that's part of my dilemma. The board has said no to a change. The board has said, yes, let's relook at the implications. And now we're at councils from the individual municipalities approving this budget.
Thank you very much for sharing that. Does that help you, Councillor Cummings, or?
Well, if I understand things correctly, the question that I posed was, and I get that we don't have to pass, or we could not accept this budget. It goes back, and so long as to your 2/3 formula works, it gets passed regardless of what this council wishes, and then it is enforced, and we pay the $9.18 requisition. The other part of that question, though, was how binding is this agreement? We talked about the one with Mountain View Senior Housing being so incredibly binding, it would be pointless to discuss trying to get out of it. We do run a library. We run lots of facilities that would not necessarily needs to be in a larger cooperative, I'll call it. It doesn't need to be in a cooperative. Our arena is not in a cooperative. We have a cooperative agreement or an ICC with our county residents that use the facilities that we own, and we could have something very similar to that with the library. The question I'd ask, though, is how legally binding are we to Parkland regional libraries? Is it legislation or a contracted agreement? That determines whether, that of course in the economic realities, determine whether or not we need to be in a library cooperative. So yes, there are options. We're the governing body of this municipality, and we can govern and make changes to it the way we want to. I just wanted to know that. I understand the two-thirds, that's great information. But I don't understand the Parkland Regional Agreement, if it's a piece of legislation, if it's like the Mountain View Senior Housing where it's a ministerial order, or if it is simply a contract that, as per all contracts, can be renegotiated and changed.
Thank you. CEO Williams would like to answer a question, but I do have Councillor Daly on the floor. Would you be okay? We'll go with CEO Williams and then yourself.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. And just to speak to Councillor Cummings' questions, we are a member of a regional library board. We do not have to be a member of the regional library board. There are mechanisms to withdraw with notice and whatnot, but there obviously are very serious implications to such work. So I would dare say that we wouldn't be able to go it our own and still maintain a library in the same way that we do. We would have to look for a replacement. And council is asking for my unsolicited advice for the amount of dollars we're dealing with to transfer to, say, a system to the south of us. It would be inconsequential, if not more expensive. So I think and a comment, if I may, Mayor Dahl, on the last year's discussion, I believe the argument wasn't so much around using X population versus Y population. It ought to be that whatever dollars were used to fund the municipality through grants, for example, should be used to tax the municipality. And I think council was all in agreement with that and voted against, the majority voted against supporting the budget. However, given that the board is recognizing this, that pressure has been applied, I can't see it's in our best interest to keep pushing against it when they're trying to make some progress either. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you very much for that clarity, CEO Williams and Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Mayor Judy.
Oh, Councillor.
Sorry. My question is around almost this, what you were describing, CAO Williams, and through the mayor to Councillor Wilson, is that in this budget they don't talk about any disbursement of funds within the association or the Prairie Regional Library network. And so you talk about a $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 increase in our requisition to this board. What does it do to the disbursement to the Olds Library, though? If we look at everything that's taking place in our society nowadays with inflation and with the cost of living and everything, that seems to be in line with what's going on with everything else. And so I'm just putting it out there that doesn't seem unreasonable as far as looking at what it costs us to run the library and what percentage that would be. So maybe you can enlighten me with kind of numbers as far as the Olds Library and what it costs to run.
I go to the answer. Deputy Mayor Ryan was on up next, so maybe I'll let her answer what she was going to speak to, and then we'll go back to the. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, appreciate that. Don't get me wrong, I don't have any problem with the Parkland Regional Library system. I think it's a great system. I think it provides a very crucial service to our local library. And I don't have a problem with, the cost of what it costs. That's not my bag here, so to speak. My whole thing is it's the principle and the transparency that I am appalled at. To me, it's just it doesn't come down to the dollars and cents. Whatever it is, let's pay it. It is what it is. But I want the board to be the Parkland Regional Library Board to be transparent in what they want, not use false numbers to get to a budget number that they want to get to. Actually provide a requisition that is going to be a proper requisition and a full disclosed requisition of the money that they need, rather than using false numbers. And that was been my beef all along with regards to this. And CEO Williams is right with regards to how we voted last year. We voted against the budget. We can vote against the budget. There's just to show that we are. That we're standing up for a principle. That's all I'm saying, is that if we agree that they should be using Alberta Treasury Board numbers, approve the budget. If we don't agree, then don't approve the budget. To me, it's as simple as that.
You, would you like to comment, Councillor Wilson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Dahl, and through you specifically to Councillor Daly's question. Unfortunately, I don't have that level of detail with me and available. I can certainly get it, but overarching the Parkland Regional Library System and their operation, and Councillor Daly, you reference, basically they're looking at a 5% increase year over year to their budget, primarily driven by salaries and some other puts and takes. They mention insurance, cyber insurance premiums, and regular cost of doing business. And then the benefits to the library, as we heard from Leslie back a couple of months ago when she appeared before council and rooted in this. Parkland's own internal analysis says there's basically a 95% return to municipalities and local libraries based on their contributions, right? And that contribution, or that benefit back to libraries, is everything from ability to purchase books at reduced rates to accessing various content, whether it's digital, e-content, various catalogs, access to materials. So at the end of the day, Parkland is saying, I guess basically, if for every dollar that it costs, the municipality gets 95 cents back in one way or another, either in a formal grant in subsidy dollars, or more likely in the form of various services, access to discounts to procure goods, material services, whether that's books or library cards.
Yeah, very good. We've had good discussion around the table. We have a motion on the floor from Councillor Walsh. A closing comment? Councillor
Yes, thank
Wilson.
you. And it'll be very brief. I think tied in with this, and it was mentioned, you had AB Munis coming up. The provincial government's grant to the libraries and library boards has been fairly flat for 4 or 5 years, except for this past year. So on top of all the other areas that we are going to be advocating for with our provincial friends, library funding could and certainly should be part of that discussion, because until this past year when they increased their grant, and I think what it meant to Parkland was an additional $53,000 or $58,000 a year. For many years, the provincial operating grant to libraries has been flat, at least 3, 4, 5 years. And the other motion that the Parkland Board has adopted is to advocate the provincial government for inflationary increase as well. Because again, that amount has been flat. So when you're wheeling and dealing in Edmonton in the coming days, keep the library in mind.
Very much, and thank you for the discussion around the table. At this time, we have a motion again from Councillor Walsh. I will call for the vote. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. If you can move to page 37, please. We will now move to reports from council, boards, committees, and commissions. And I will get a motion on the floor prior to going around the table. Thank you. Councillor Blatz?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that council accepts the reports from council, authority, boards, committees, and commissions ending September 25th, 2023, and be received for information.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Blatz. We have 2 reports in here, and I will start going around the table with Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I attended all regular council meetings for the period in question. August 23rd, I attended a coffee with councillors at the Legion, which was somewhat attended with a few people. And I'll just refer back to what the previous discussion of coffee with councillors are, so I'm not going to put much into that. August 28th, I attended council service level review. September 7th, coffee with councillors at the Crossing Pub at the college. And that was interesting, actually, to speak to a student there about what was happening on the campus. September 7th, I attended a community showcase for a short time. September 20th, the library board. Library is actually working on their current budget, coming soon to council. Also discussed the fundraising of October 21st. Put that on your calendars. We're going to have a comedy night on October 21st. Adam Blank out of Edmonton will be attending. So it is a important fundraising event for the library. It's attached to the end of your agenda, but it looks like this. You can sign up online for tickets. Other than that, that's all I have to report.
Thank you very much. I will now move up. We'll go to Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I also attended all of the regular council committee meetings. I also participated in the service level review. I attended 3 of the coffee with council sessions, one at the Albertan, one at the Olds Town Square, and one at the Olds Legion. I toured in the Community Connection Center. I participated in the Olds College Golf Classic Tournament, which is a fundraiser for the Broncos sports programs at the college. Attended the Whitecap Resources 3rd Annual Neighbors Meet and Greet Barbecue. Had a Mountain View Regional Mountain View Regional Water Commission meeting, and I also attended the annual showcase on September 7th.
Thank you. We'll move down to Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Mayor. I also attended all council meetings and policies and procedures meetings, as well as the service level review meetings, as Councillor Blatz had mentioned those as well. I attended the tour of the Community Connections Center in the downtown. Participated in the Olds College Golf Classic. Participated with 3 coffee with councillor sessions, the Olds Legion, the Community Connection Center, and the Olds College. Attended the community meet and greet barbecue at Whitecap Resources as well. Participated in the recruitment interviews and part of the ONET governance team. Attended the Olds Attraction and Retention Medical Professionals Committee. Also attended the community showcase. Attended the Healthcare Foundation brunch. Thank you, Councillor Wilson, for the great bacon. It was good. Thank you. Participated in the Mount View Senior Housing Golf Tournament, and participated also in the National Tree Day planting ceremony as well. And a copy of my report has been submitted to Marcy to be included in the minutes.
Thank you very much, Councillor Daly. We'll go to Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So on top of the regular council meetings and PMP meeting, I did attend the Whitecap Resources barbecue and tour of their gas plant to south of Olds. It was really interesting to see their processes and what environmental impact they have in our community, and as well their emergency response groups. To do a couple of council coffee with councillors. We talked about that earlier today. The town's community showcase this year was on the 7th. It was very well populated, in my opinion, although got a lot of good input from a lot of different people there as well. We attended an appreciation brunch on the 10th for Alberta Health Services and the fundraising committee that's in our community for discussing their success in their previous fundraising for the beds, the infant, I can't remember the name of them, somebody else help me out here, the incubator things for the babies. Panda warmers, thank you. And their new goal that was announced for purchasing some beds, as well as a grant, not a grant, a trust that they had set up that was going to fundraise about half of that. So that seemed pretty good as well. Attended both days of the Oktoberfest, great event. But I did hear that the premier did not drink all of her beer, which is disappointing. National Tree Day, of course, we all got really muddy planting some trees in the rain. I did attend 2 other events that are kind of updatable there in the Red Deer River Municipal Users Group in Drumheller. So last year we commissioned a project to determine the feasibility or need or requirements of the Red Deer River Basin for extra storage. This affects us, of course, because that's where we get our drinking water from, is the Red Deer River. There's only 3 major river basins, and all the provincial attention is on the 2 larger ones in the south and the north, because of course Edmonton and Calgary drive through those. But we have Red Deer, which is the 3rd largest community in Alberta, driving through ours. And there's been a lot of anecdotal talk over the last few years of building a second reservoir downstream before Drumheller. So this project that we funded last year was to come up with the math and the numbers to either agree or disagree with that anecdotal comment. They're in the final stages of putting the report together. As soon as we get a copy of the report, I'll present it to council. The preliminary findings, though, is that we can sustain maybe another 20 to 25 years of water out of the Red Deer River the way it is now before we start seeing major droughts along our river basin, which will, of course, affect all of us, even senior water holders like us, or the Water Commission. The one thing that this survey or analysis doesn't deal with is population growth. So Central Alberta is a growing population center. So we weren't super concerned about that. We were more concerned about the weather patterns moving forward. So there's a lot of good information presented at our meeting last week about that. Once that report is done, we're going to start going towards advocacy because a dam and reservoir is not a couple $100,000. It's $3 to $5 billion and a 10-year build project. So it's a major capital investment our community, all of the communities along the Red Deer River require and will be seriously affected by. This year, we are in a drought, even in the Red Deer River Basin. Not so as severe as the Bow River, but still quite significant to the point where water restrictions and better management controls at the reservoir currently are in effect. And there may possibly be water restrictions in the spring simply because of the lack of spring runoff last year. So 2 years of drought is very bad, I guess. So that's a very important process there. Also, we talked about collaborating with other groups that were concerned about water, and that's particularly important because of next week's events up in Edmonton for Alberta municipalities. They do have a committee that the Mayor of Sundre sits on right now called the Sustainability and Environment Committee. It's chaired by Tanya Thorne, thank you. We all know who I'm talking about when I say Tanya, that's weird. So it's a powerful commitment that they're actually not talking about water at all. So Mayor Richard was really concerned, Richard Warnick from Sundre was really concerned that we're not talking water at that AM committee at all. Mostly brownfields was discussed about that one. Water loss and infiltration was discussed a lot because it's not unique to our town at that percentage point where we've talked about quite a bit. Lots of other towns are also in that 40% category due to aging infrastructure. Most notably, Didsbury to our south is over 40% water loss as well. And the town of Alex had been over 40, and due to some recent technology that they've invested in, have dropped it down to 12%. So other communities are definitely challenged by the same things that we're challenged in. And they're winning. They're coming up with good solutions. I know Sundry talked about a sonar triangulation system that they've employed, which is doing well, and they're renting it out to Didsbury, and that's why Didsbury's finding some of their water. The other one that I attended was the Mountain View Regional Waste Commission. That was this morning. We talked a lot about recycling and the removal of the recycling system and how that's affecting the landfill. The landfill staff are seeing quite a lot of complaints with people showing up with just cardboard and plastic, having to pay a $5 minimum tipping fee, and not realizing that they should just mix that with their regular garbage, so they're paying for the tonnage rather than the minimum fee for a couple of cardboard boxes. And one of the transfer sites, both of the transfer sites are seeing larger usage, but none of the towns have really reported any complaints. It's county residents are making their complaints very, very well known. The county's still in support of all of that, though. The budget was approved today. It'll be coming forward to council for our budgeting, or to administration for our budgeting processes. But just to recap on that, our requisition is dropping to $11.46 per diem, or per, not per diem, sorry, per capita. The transfer stations are still now the bulk at 6.53. Recycling is down to 1.98. This recycling, though, isn't the recycling we're thinking of, the blue boxes, cardboard, paper. It's the concrete and shingles and things like that that go to the landfill already. And the landfill costs at 2.95 cents. So overall, this is a reduction of $109,801 estimated in the 2024 budget from the 2023 budget for our assessment, based on the reduction of that, the removal of our recycling transfer stations. And that's a significant savings, I think, on everybody's point. Other than that, the landfill is running great. We've got tons of room for more garbage, and it's a great environmental way of disposing of our waste. I think
Thank you for
that's
sharing that. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Sorry, I do have a written report, but I didn't get it into Marcy in time, so I'll provide it to her for submission into the agenda package, or the minutes. Mountain View Seniors Housing, I attended a board meeting this week on September 2nd. When was that? 22nd? We were presented with a draft budget. We updated our rate schedule. We updated our reserve policy. And the board was pleased to learn that occupancy rates for our lodges continue to improve, including the fact that we've got all of our life lease and olds and sundries filled. So that's quite amazing. Myself as board chair and our CAO, Stacy Stilling, met with a representative of Community Social Services and Seniors to review asset transfer opportunities. As everybody knows, the province has, basically put out there that they want to dispose of or transfer some of their assets to housing management bodies. And Mountain View Seniors Housing was one of the groups that they approached first. And so we have a committee that we've set up, made up of board members and executive team, to discuss those opportunities and where we will go forward on anything. At this point, we've not said whether or not we would accept any asset transfers, but we certainly will have a discussion about it. Mountain View Seniors Housing Foundation Golf Tournament was held September 14th at the Olds Golf Course. This marked the 13th annual tournament, and it recorded the highest number of sponsors, attendees, and amount of money raised, which was approximately $30,000, which is pretty amazing. Over the past 13 years, more than $200,000 has been raised by the foundation through the golf tournament. And this money is used for items such as furniture and gazebos and spa tubs, things like that, within the building. So that's great. Other community events and sessions and meetings and everything. I attended the surface level review, Whitecap Resources, which has been mentioned, Old Oktoberfest, the National Tree Day ceremony, which was very cold and wet and muddy, and participated in the Women's Elected Officials Gathering for those in the Alberta Communities Southern Alberta Zone, which I attended with Mayor Dahl, and then also attended the Olds College Broncos Golf Tournament, 2 coffees with council, Community Connection Center tour, and as well as regular meetings. That's it.
You. I noticed you were a special guest for Mountain View Seniors Housing this year. What does a special guest do?
For what? Sorry, special guest for?
Zing. For the golf tournament, I think that's...
I don't know. I didn't know I was a special guest, so I have no
Oh.
idea.
Okay, we'll talk about it further.
I guess I wasn't that special after all.
Okay, thanks. Okay, that's awesome. Thank you very much, everyone. We have a motion on the floor from Councillor Blatz. If there's no further questions, or, I'm sorry, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I was just gonna, my written report is in the agenda for those to take a look at. I just wanted to specifically draw everybody's attention to 1 or 2 items. The Small Business Awards Gala for the Olds and District Chamber of Commerce is set for October 19th at the Olds Legion. It is going to be a smaller venue, so get your tickets early. Previously, it's been held at the Alumni Center. So tickets and seating will be a premium, and I know most of council is going to be in Edmonton later this week, but the Business Beer and Blue Jeans event is scheduled for September 27th. And I would just also like to acknowledge I attended, in addition to a lot of the other events that have been mentioned, the Culture Days that were on Saturday, and big hats off to the 7, 8, or 9 exhibitors that were there, some of the entertainment, who braved the chilly morning. It did warm up through the course of the day, and obviously the town folks who were instrumental in pulling that together. So, thank you.
Good, thank you for that add-on. Very good. Any further comments? I'll call for the vote then. Those in favor? That's carried, thank you. And moving down to item 7A, the CAO report.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. A couple items in the package. First thing is the reporter problem. Report, we still have a recurring error from last month where our bylaw ticketing system or complaint system, which is run through Parkland County Dispatch, has not quite been updated with here. But as far as I know, there is no outstanding bylaw issues. The caveat being that barking dogs continue to be an uptick in complaints, but the resources and efficacy available to solve that problem is not quite there. Everything else seems to be in order. Road issues and parks and trails continue to lead the pack, but we saw a noticeable decline month over month. We're seeing it right now. August was still somewhat high. Potholes and uncut grass, or the length of grass, with the service level change primarily. Not contained in this report, but we're noticing, certainly since September hit, that the use of reporter problem has decreased significantly, and it's probably not because people have less issues to report or comment on, but just a reminder for council and those watching that that is by far the most effective way we have to deal with complaints at the administrative level, to triage accordingly and respond. So we would encourage everyone to make use of that. The second page is the health and safety incident near miss report. This is the second iteration of it. 5 new add-ons from the last time you saw this, and same thing, vehicle accidents primarily related to backing up, and a personal injury due to an errant post pounder, which resulted in a small laceration on the head. Overall, these incidents are largely contained to the summer season when we do have the casual staff on. It's something we are certainly trying to address, but largely unavoidable. Most of them are driving related. Inexperience tends to be the primary contribution to it, but as our health and safety program develops, we obviously want to see these incidents decline, certainly in frequency and severity. And then council action items, only 2 new things added with the MVP committee bylaw, which council has passed, and then the community showcase report. We don't track attendance officially at the community showcase. We do track vendors, and since we've taken it over in 2019 from Community Lifestyles, 2023 was the highest amount of vendors we've ever had with 78, and anecdotally, those in attendance, both staff, town staff and otherwise, believe it was the one of the higher attendant years they have seen. So we hope to look at this both from a promotional side and then that information gathering side going forward. The budget survey has closed. We're just shy of 300 responses, which puts us a little over last year, which makes it our best responded survey to date. 300 is, I think, a fair representation. We always hope for a bit more, but that will never end. Sheena will be reporting that to council, I believe the first council meeting of October, is our schedule for that. And Oldstoberfest, now 2 weekends past, spoke with Jillian from C5. They're happy with how the event went. Very calm and respectful crowd. From the town side, the traffic was significant as expected, but we didn't have any major issues outside of a few lineups during the evening times, and one report of petty vandalism on Main Street, but those inebriated individuals were identified. And thanks to C5 for hosting the rodeo. That brings a lot of benefit to the community, lots of exposure, lots of hotel and restaurant business, and to Olds Regional Exhibition as well for hosting. It's always great to continue that working relationship that is now at least 100 years deep. And that's all I had.
Thank you very much. That's very good report with C5. Councillor Blatz and then Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Mayor Dolan, through you to CEO Williams. And although it's not mentioned in your report here, I just wondered what the status was on our swimming pool. I've had several residents inquiring as to when potentially we will be reopening and where we are as far as completion of the work.
Thanks for the question. I don't have firm update right now. Hoping Monday's PMP we will have a timeline. It does sound like there are part shortages, so there will be delays. I'm just not sure what that will look like right now. Sorry.
No, thank you for that. And as long as we get an update in the public by PMP, that would be great. That'll appease a lot of individuals, I'm sure.
Do see activity over there every time I drive by, so something is moving. Councillor Cummings?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple of clarifications if I can get. You said that the budget response was the best ever survey, or was it the best ever budget survey? So I know that I've been very critical in the past of the budget survey process and the lack of responses. 300 sounds great compared to the numbers that we've seen in the past, and especially the value of the questions that were asked this year as opposed to previous years. But I was just curious at your comment there, and I just wrote the note down as you said it, because I know that we had a lot more responses, I think, to where the hockey rink was supposed to be going, rather than this one. So I'm going to assume it's the best budget survey rather than the best survey altogether. The very first thing in your report of problem is animals, and I know you said there was some problems with the report of problem bylaw reporting through the agency that we use. Over the past few months, we've heard that our animal control situation is to the point where it's so overwhelmed we simply can't take more animals. So we can't deal with the complaints of stray animals, stray cats, stray dogs, abandoned animals, and stuff like that. And you were at one point looking for volunteers to foster animals in care. Can you give us a little bit of a sit-rep and see where we're at in that Are the shelters still full? Are we still trying to find volunteers?
Thank you for the question. I guess with the budget survey, I guess in our opinion, it was the best survey ever, but we're also very biased. But I think the information gleaned from the, I guess, reformative questions certainly are going to be more valuable to us than what we saw in previous iterations. On the animal side, yeah, we have no animals up for adoption. We didn't have a lot after we announced the program. I want to say fewer than 10 foster situations, but it worked quite well, and fortunately the issue has died down after that spring influx that we received. I haven't had an update from the shelters recently, but certainly as of probably early August, it was still at capacity. And then with the capacity of bylaw, animals do steer, I would say, that the bulk of the issues right now in terms of the volume of complaints, and very difficult complaints to solve. As I mentioned in the previous council meeting with barking animals, which is the highest number of animal complaints, we do ask complainants to fill out a bark log, which is basically a 14-day window trying to log the time and duration as best they can of barking dogs. People generally aren't favorable to doing that. They do tend to expect that call and response, and it's just not practical. That's, I think, a previous comment you made from the Coffee with Council sessions. There seems to be a deteriorated ability to talk to your neighbor about things. Certainly people do and have no success, but it really is a neighborly dispute at some point, and expecting the town's bylaw enforcement to step in and every time a dog is, loud or annoying is just not a feasible way for a government to run. And we do have to change the attitude as opposed to change the service level, in my opinion. But yeah, hopefully that answered your question. It was kind of a tirade. My apologies.
No, that was perfect. I mean, I was more concerned about the stray animals being where the solution lies in the stray animal population as it continues to rise and our shelters are continually full. The barking dogs, I own 3 dogs. We walk our dogs every day. Dogs bark at our dogs bark at their dogs. It's their dogs. I mean,
Thank you, CEO Williams. Can I get a motion, please, for the report? Councillor Blatz?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that the Chief Administrative Officer report be accepted for information.
Thank you. I will call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. And our last correspondence and information on page 45. We have 2 items. Are there any questions to these? All right, I'd ask for a motion, please. Councillor Ryan? Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that the correspondence and information report ending September 25th, 2023 be received for information.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. And the one item was the Olds Municipal Library Comedy Night, and the other for the viewers was the Rotary Club Harvest Ball for 2023. I will call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Very good. We are at the end of our meeting. I thank all viewers and thank the media for being here today. And I will call adjournment at 2:32 p.m. Thanks, everyone.